Hello everyone, and welcome back to Fully Vetted. Here at Fully Vetted, our goal is to bring you the story behind the car. Corvettes are what bring us together, but it's the story that keeps us coming back for more. In this episode, we chat with Kevin Bright. Kevin has a great story about his 1958 Corvette, and we were honored to sit down with him and let him share that story. Before we get going on the interview, please remember to like, subscribe, and share this video. And if you think your car deserves to be the star of our next episode, by all means, send us an email. The link is in the description below. Keep in mind, we can't showcase everyone. Enjoy the show. As far as the story about this car, I understand that your dad has a lot to do with it, Kevin. Is that correct?
Everything.
Everything to do with it, okay.
Everything.
And tell me the story.
So he graduated high school in 1958.
1958, wow. So that's the year of this car.
Yeah. And he had never seen it before. It was his first year out.
Oh, wow.
And he was just enamored by it. I guess it was the high school graduation, and he sat in it, and he's like, all right, someday. And so that's where it all started.
Wow.
The dream for the 58 Corvette started in 58. He saw it for the first time. I don't know the details of the color or anything, but he grew up in Idaho.
Okay.
Was born and raised in Idaho, small community, small town. So then throughout his life, he was a card guy. Didn't really know how to work on them, but just loved cars.
Right.
And every car he owned from that point, he drove a 56 Chevy to school here at BYU, and
that's
he
awesome.
loved that. It was a blue and silver. But when he finally got his first car, his first real car, he had a Corvette there in the middle for a little bit, but they leaked too much oil,
right.
so he sent it back. I think it was early 60s.
Was it the first generation? Or the
yeah,
second? Okay.
I think it was the first generation. He fell in love with it, non-turbo.
Yeah.
And it just leaked oil like crazy, so he turned that in, and he picked up a 64 Impala.
Ooh.
Big block, black vinyl top, gorgeous car, loved the car. And he was the kind of guy that you had to have a clean car inside and out. You could eat off of his engines. We didn't take our shoes off necessarily, but he's like, don't touch the windows. No eating, absolutely no eating in the cars, and enjoy the day, right?
Yeah, so you never went to a hamburger drive-in in your cars?
No, never. I don't
awesome.
even think we had a soda in the car. So, and it was a beautiful yellow, and he loved the car. And then his next car was a 1972 GMC Jimmy, white top, yellow. And he just fell in love with the yellow. Never took the top off of the Jimmy, never saw the beige carpet. It was always towels. And again, don't touch the windows.
Right.
Once in a while, we'd fog up the window and put a little smiley face and see if he caught it. He would run hot water into his garage in Idaho, and he'd wash his cars weekly, year-round, regardless of the weather.
That's pretty amazing.
And he just absolutely loved it. Would never take him out in the weather. Then that car got stolen, unfortunately. The 72 did, and he picked up an 81 step-side GMC Jimmy. I still have that one today.
Yeah, I see that in the back there.
Yeah, I took that to prom. 37 years later, my son took it to prom, and I still have it.
And I see that it's yellow.
It's yellow.
Okay, so
Yeah.
yellow is a thing with your dad.
Yeah, so when he finally gets ready to retire, he worked out at EG&G INEL plant up in Idaho as an engineer burying nuclear waste. So he calls me one day and he says, I'm ready to kind of get my final car of my life. And I was like, oh, that's pretty exciting. And so we looked at Prowlers, we looked at Crossfires, and I really loved the Prowler. He said it only had a V6, he wanted a V8, and I'm like, we could put anything in the car. We could do it. No, and then he's like, I really want this Corvette. And he kept sending me pictures. This was in early 2000, but he wasn't ready to retire yet, like right away. He's like, I want to build this car. Like, I was living at the time out east, outside of Philly and Reading, outside of Reading and Philly, PA.
Gotcha.
He found one in North Carolina, looked a little long in the tooth. It ran, I'd say it was a 6, maybe a 5 out of 10. Had a hard top, and he said, I really like this car. And I was like, I'm not sure. Because I really like the Prowlers, the newer cars. These were new. He's like, we need to go take a look at it. And I couldn't get away, but I had a really good friend up there, and he went and took a look at it, and he came back. He's like, man, you can get it for the right price. It's a little long in the tooth, so you're gonna have to do a lot of work to it. So he picked it up for $43,000 in 2003.
Wow.
And I wouldn't say that was a steal, but it was a pretty good deal. It had been clipped in the front, clipped in the back, pour repairs done, painted blue all blue, no coving. It was silver blue. Guy didn't know what he had. His wife hated it.
That's what it sounds like. Yeah.
Yeah, it smelled like gas the whole time. It was a runner, but barely.
Barely, yeah.
He just had a love for cars. His cars were everything to him, but he couldn't work on them.
Okay.
Never lifted a wrench. Would always call me.
So is your dad still with us?
No,
okay.
He passed away in 2012.
Okay. Okay.
In August of 2012, I would go out and wash the cars with him. And when I say it would be hours, and he would have the hood open and he would be polishing, and I'm like, nobody does this.
Right.
I would tell him, Bright, nobody does this. You're the only one that does this. Doesn't matter. And he taught me how to wash the white walls with borax and powder, and he loved white walls. Every one of his car had white walls, and so that was a big deal to him. Had to have white walls, whatever it was. That was part of the reason that he shied away from the Crossfire and the Prowler. I don't think a Prowler will look good with white walls.
You're talking about the Chrysler Crossfire?
Yeah, and the Prowler. The Chrysler Prowler, yeah. They're not white wall style cars. I got white walls on the truck. They didn't come that way.
So tell us a little bit about your business, Kevin.
All right, it started in June 15th of 2019.
Okay.
Brother-in-law came to me, and he's always wanted to start a business. Found this place, convinced me. Every year is a banner year for
You think
us.
How much of a role has this car
Huge.
Because you park it out front. Did they get to drive off?
The body lines, they're incredible.
They are.
I love the washboard hood. I love the fact that you can identify these older cars almost in an instant. Every year they were different. Well, it's the first year that came out with dual headlights. In 57, it was the single headlights.
Right.
58 came out with dual headlights, the washboard hood, and the spears on the trunk. That's the only year you got that.
Yeah, I was going to say they added a lot more chrome this year.
A lot of chrome.
Yeah.
I think the trim around the coves, the front bumpers, the grill remained pretty heavy, but it was the spears in the back and the washboard hood and the dual head.
So tell me about these tires.
So
those are pretty amazing tires.
Yeah, those are a little unique. We had to have white wall tires, and there wasn't any that were radial in the early 2000s that I could find that didn't have. They had them for an inch, and I'm looking for 4.
Right.
Nobody had a radial tire, because my dad wanted the vehicle to be a daily driver. He actually wanted me to put studded tires on it, or at least buy them and have them ready to go.
Have them ready to go.
And I said, no, you're not driving this. He's like, it's going to be my daily. I'm like, no. I put 8 years in the restoration of this. Every bit of this car has my DNA on it. It's just hours and hours. I quit counting after 2000.
Right.
I was keeping track just for fun. He funded the build. Blood, sweat, and tears were my. So we got the tires, and I was struggling, and I came across somebody. I don't remember the exact story, but the guy's like, we can make those however you want. I'll vulcanize the white walls in the tire. So these are just Firestone.
They're one-offs. Is that what you're telling me?
These are one-offs. They're more expensive on the white wall than the tires were.
Wow.
I think the tires, they're 15-inch. There's nothing fancy with them. They're Firestone. And then while they're there, they called me and they said, hey, we have a new process. You want a beauty ring on top of the white wall, but they couldn't show me any pictures. It's 2002, I guess email, but there was no phones that I remember.
Yeah, compared to now, for sure, yeah.
So I was like, sure, go ahead. And that's the little half-inch.
That little raised edge.
Yeah, they call it a beauty
awesome.
ring.
So your dad finds the car, you guys buy it, and what was the process then at that point, getting to where it's at now?
I had a lot of good friends in the hot rod industry. One of the other things that I would like to say what I love about the Vette is the color.
Yes. And well, the whole yellow thing to begin with.
The whole yellow thing. People don't like yellow cars, and I get a lot of mixed reviews on the yellows. I really do. People say, why did you paint it yellow?
I love yellow.
They associate the yellow maybe with weakness or something, and you don't see a whole lot of yellow out there. But I would say every one of the cars that my dad selected growing up were perfect in yellow. I would never paint today's Corvette yellow. And I didn't like the bright color, and it's a really early 58. The VIN number is a low.
How many did they make in 1958? Do you remember? Do you know? I'll have to look that up and add it.
I've got a Corvette book inside. Okay. But we'll look at the VIN plate. It's like 286 or 2,800. They didn't make that many, so it's a really low production. And I liked that the original color was yellow, but back in the day, the yellow was so washed out.
Well, they didn't have clear coat back then.
Yeah, it was a single stage, and it was really almost beige, very light.
Very light.
Color was a big deal, and I worked with my painter. That's the only thing I didn't do. I did all the body work, that I didn't paint it. I picked the middle one, and it was a 1992 Toyota MR2.
Oh, wow.
So that's the actual color, is a Toyota MR2. And that car doesn't look too bad in yellow. I don't mind.
Well, I think this matches perfectly. I would never have known, unless you told me, that it was a color other than what the Corvette originally came in. Because to me, based on my eye and my knowledge of Corvettes, it looks yellow. Very, very appropriate.
Yeah, so I think if you stuck it next to it, it would be stark. Right. But the other thing that the painter did for me is like, look, we're going to paint it antique white, like the Coves, the whole car white, and that will help lighten the yellow, because I was still a little nervous. And when I saw it, I couldn't have picked a better color.
Yeah, it's an awesome color.
I love the lines. I love the color. The fiberglass, it's cracking everywhere. It's delaminating, and the painter told me that. Even in the 50s, it was not a strong product.
You spent a lot of time and effort on this car. What are the modifications that you did to it? Because I know it's not exactly
It's a Resto-mod.
It's considered a Resto-mod. So tell me some of the things that you did to it that would call it a Resto-mod.
So when we first got it, we were all excited to keep it original. That was the first thing. Original. Carbureted. I was a little bit worried about him driving it around because the altitude change, and I started looking into it, and it didn't have the original engine. 283 was the original size, but it wasn't the original engine. And I think according to the build sheet, it came with an automatic, and this had a Muncie 22 in it, which I was fine with. So at that point, I just said to my dad, hey, game's on.
Yeah.
We're not going to keep this. It's not. We can't. I don't want to go try to force a number match on any of this. So let's just start with a fresh build. And I have some ideas.
Have fun.
I want to have a bigger engine. I want to have a reliable fuel system, not the Rochester fuel injection system, which was highly unreliable.
So I hear. Yeah.
They took them off.
Yeah.
I mean, they brought them back, and they said, give me my old carburetor back. At least I can tune that.
Right.
And it was very finicky. And it put out 335
wow.
At the back of the crank in horsepower, and 355 in torque. It's real torquey.
Nice.
So I've had it up, 110. And it's not safe. You're like, how come the tires aren't touching the road? How come I can't turn?
I think that's a common Corvette problem. It seems like they like to lift up that front end.
This thing wants to take off. Yeah. But it would roar. I'd hit fourth gear and just take the torque on this is.
I can imagine.
It's giddy.
I can imagine.
And it sounds really rich, and it's got a beautiful throat. And I used glass packs. These are tubes. And they came from the era of the 50s and 60s. So I bought those and put them on. They're a little long, so it's not as loud as I want it to be. But anyway, this thing will roll and roll.
So how long did that whole process take you to get it to the point where the car was drivable?
8 years.
8 years. Wow.
Yeah, so the whole time he's all excited. He'd come and he lived here, I lived out east. He'd come and visit, and we'd get pictures taken, and we'd just look at stuff. All of his cars in brown interior. And his one request was that it looks like a baseball glove. He was a catcher. His twin brother was a pitcher, and they played for BYU. And that was his love. He loved baseball more than anything. So he was a catcher. I sourced a local Amish family.
Oh.
And out east, the Amish are workers. They do metal work, woodwork, leather work, interior, automotive. They're very proud of their work, and they do a great job.
That's amazing.
So I took the seats and I picked out the leather, and I had them do them.
That's awesome.
And they're custom made from a
custom-made Amish
little Amish family who did leather, and they did mostly buggies and sleighs. They were big into Santa sleighs, and the Amish pulled around in a sleigh in the wintertime on their fields. Beautiful work. A lot of tuck and roll, but
that's awesome. How much time did your father get to enjoy this car?
Not long.
Not long? Tell us that story.
It's pretty, it's sad. I really feel sorry for him because he just wanted this more than anything. And he wasn't pushing me on time. I had my regular career. I would work on it almost every night. My dad would come out once a year, once every 2 years, and we'd go look at the car and sit in it. And I had the seats in my office, and one of the cool things is I redid the entire dash, and I took it all apart and I repainted it to spec, and I changed over the tachometer from mechanical because it was driven off of the distributor.
Yeah.
It was driven off and I changed that over to digital, but the face and the needles are all exact. So half the time in my office was the smallest of pieces, and I'm painting and
don't touch that.
Don't move that. And you know, I reset the odometer, so it's got 3,200 odd miles since its build. He calls me up and he's like, "Hey, I want to come out and pick up the car." And I was like, "No, that wasn't the plan. I was going to ship it to you. I'm done with it." He's like, "Oh, I want to come out and drive it." And I was like, "It's winter." And I found that very odd. At first, I was like, we're going to ship this to you and you're going to drive it in the spring. That's the plan. Anyway, so I drove it. I had it, drove it. And then he shows up middle of November. It was really cold. It was windy. And I went up and took him to get the car. It was at a storage facility. And I said, "It's yours." He's like, "Can I drive it home?" And I'm like, no, this thing doesn't have 500 miles on it yet. We still have to break it in and worry about things. We picked up the car. He drove it for about 15 minutes. Cried. He loved it. It was the best moment. I'm telling you, it was the best moment.
I can imagine.
That moment will forever live with me. He trembled as he touched it. He got emotional. So we drove it. Top up. He's like, "This is my dream. It's my dream come true." And I was so proud. Every bit of those hours gone. You know, there were times where I was cursing this thing and I was tired of it. And it was affecting my life, you know, but all that was gone.
Right.
When he said how proud he was.
Yeah, amazing father-son moment. Yeah, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, just him trembling when he touched it. It was, to him, the Holy Grail. And it's just a car, let's go. So we get in and first thing he says, "Wow, this clutch is heavy." And I'm like, "Don't be a pansy, let's go." And he would take it easy, and I'm like, "No, go. This thing will go." And he got on it, and he was just like, "It's too powerful." I'm like, "Come on, you're fine." And when we got on the freeway, and I'm like, "Roar." We're getting it up there, and he's just like, "Wow." Then we started driving it around in the town, and he complained about the clutch. And I'm like, "Just pop it in neutral. Everything, it's all brand new. There's no problem. It's just built because it's built." So we get back, another great moment. He thanked me. He just words. He said, "I want you to put a hydraulic clutch in it and I'll pick it up in the spring." And I'm like, "No, that's 3 more months of my time plus about $1,000. He's like, "Doesn't matter. Let's put a hydraulic clutch in." And he goes, "I want air conditioning." And I said, "No." He's like, "No, that's what I want." What he had done that I didn't know about, he had known at that time he was terminal.
Oh.
Every Christmas was easy. Every birthday was easy. Go online and find anything Corvette.
Mm-hmm.
He had a leather jacket. That's what he's wearing in the picture. He had a duffel bag. He had towels. He had blankets. He had knickknacks every year. He brought that all with him.
Oh, wow.
And gave it to my wife and said, "Don't say anything to Kevin." He's like, "How?
Yeah.
What are you doing?" He's like, "I'm happy. I'm good. I'm not taking the car home." I didn't know. That spring came and he kept talking about the clutch. I was thinking about it. I got all the specs to it, and then I got busy, and then he got sick. He ended up in the hospital, and he was in the hospital, and I said, "What's going on?" He's like, "They're working with me." But it was progressing really slow, and he would have good times. And then my wife couldn't take it anymore, and she
told you.
Showed me all the stuff. And then I was mad.
That's sad.
I was mad. I was like, "Why didn't you tell me?" He's like, "I don't want to even talk about it.
Yeah.
You've given me my dream."
Right. That's an amazing story.
My dream's fulfilled.
Yeah.
Like, I don't need it anymore. You keep the car. And it never left.
That's an amazing story.
Never left. And so I don't have the air in it, and I didn't put a hydraulic clutch in.
There you go.
When he died, we hauled him to the cemetery in the back of his truck.
Oh, really? That's pretty awesome.
That's what he wanted. He loved his cars. And this has been a wonderful blessing in my life. I don't fit in it. I'm too tall. I feel like a clown. I look over the top. This has been my #1 advertisement.
For sure.
People recognize it, where the yellow car is. Some don't even know. Some of the younger people go, "Is that car even real?"
Yeah,
is that a prop from Hollywood? The younger generation have no idea. You know, and that they don't have to know, but one of them asks, "Is that even a real car, or is that just a prop?"
Yeah, I can see that. I can see that.
It stays here. Funny story. Guy came to me and he's like, "You wouldn't believe this, but at church the other day, some guy got up there and was talking about the yellow Corvette." I'm like, "How does that tie together?" He's like, "You know what? I don't even remember,